Hi there, everyone. I hope you're all well. My name is Darren Simpson. I'm the author of Scavengers, The Memory Thieves, and most recently, Furthermore. And this is a little video I've made in celebration of World Book Day 2023. And I thought for a little change, rather than just jumping straight into stuff about how books are so good for you and why it's so important that you read, I thought I'd just get a bit more personal and talk about my history of books and what books mean to me. So if I think back to my earliest memory of reading, there's one book that I used to read over and over again as a kid, as a very young kid, and it was an encyclopedia of monsters and myths. And it had all these great illustrations of vampires and werewolves, and quite creepy illustrations too, and more obscure creatures like sirens and the lambton worm. And I remember looking at these pictures and reading about these creatures over and over again and finding it fascinating. And around that time, I was also reading a lot of mythology, a lot of mythological stories like Greek mythology, Norse mythology. So a lot of stuff with creatures and monsters and heroes with supernatural powers. And thinking back, that early taste in kind of the macabre and horror from reading those books about supernatural creatures probably did find its way into my fiction. A lot of my books have sort of slightly more grotesque and horror-ish elements. And I think that goes right to the beginning of my reading taste when I was very young. And then I think when I got a bit older, I started reading chapter books. And the main thing that comes to mind there are two things. Roald Dahl. I read a lot of Roald Dahl. A bit of a controversial, tricky character these days, but I loved his books at the time. I loved how mischievous and playful they were. I loved the made-up vocabulary and the energy and fizz of the writing. And just how dark and sinister the stories were. That really appealed to me as a young person. I think we all like as kids and as old people, we like stuff that's a bit on the dark side. And yeah. So I used to read a lot of Roald Dahl, and that again probably has found its way into my writing. The made-up language Roald Dahl, the made-up words Roald Dahl has sometimes probably influenced Scavengers, which has its own made-up vocabulary at times. And then also, as well as reading Roald Dahl, I remember reading a lot of Asterix comics. And I should mention, by the way, that comics totally count as reading. Yeah, while I'm on the subject, they totally count. Graphic novels, comics, they are reading, and they're also an art form in their own right. So totally respectable thing to read. I used to read a lot of Asterix comics. But I remember at some point stuff like Roald Dahl and Asterix comics started to feel a bit too young for me. But the problem was I grew up in an army estate, often abroad in Germany. And we didn't have a library we could use, an English library. So the only place I could go to for more books was my mum's bookshelves. So I moved on to them and I started reading kind of adult fiction at quite a young age, probably in my very early teens or 11 plus or so. I started reading stuff like Stephen King and James Herbert and those horror books. And I felt very kind of excited about reading adult stuff as such a young person. And I got to really enjoy the horror and the experience of it. The thing about reading, especially stuff that's horror or scary or tense or emotional, is that reading is a safe space to experience all of those things. That's the wonderful thing about books. And I definitely got that out when I was reading those horror books at that time. I started reading those stories. And after that, I obviously got older and just started reading whatever I wanted. And I still read now as voraciously as I did when I was younger. Obviously, when I was younger, I read, I guess, purely for entertainment. But I think all along, reading was doing so much more for me than that. It was improving my vocabulary. It probably taught me a lot about storytelling, which obviously helped me become a writer down the line. I never actually got taught how to write. You don't have to either. I just read lots and practiced. That's all there was to it. So reading lots helped my writing. And also, one thing I'm more aware of as an adult is that reading is just so good for my mental health. I spend a lot of time fretting about things or being worried about certain things or trying to figure out new book ideas and stuff. And reading just calms me down and soothes me. And it's probably been doing that all my life without me realizing it. And if I don't read a couple of chapters or something before I go to bed, I can't sleep because my head is so busy. So reading has been proven to chill you out and relax. So it's so good for your mental health. Obviously, it helped my vocabulary, my storytelling. It's also been proven to be good for empathy. I promise not to talk too much about how good books are good for you. I just want to sort of show how books not only entertain you, but can really become an integral part of your life. And it's well worth exploring books. And if you think you don't like books, it's purely because you haven't had any put in your hands or come your way that you really enjoy, that click with you, not just yet. So just keep exploring books and you'll get all those benefits. That's my advice. And they will hopefully affect your life as much as they've affected mine. Okay, have a wonderful World Book Day and I'll see you around. Cheers, bye.